Hey, it's Anthony and Tucker from Land Title. We came to bring your lender update for the month. Let's dive into Boulder County and show you what's happening. Now, we definitely are seeing some interesting behavior here at the beginning of the year, right, Tucker?
I couldn't agree more. So looking at this, we're seeing our active inventory is of course growing. That's seasonality. That's normal. What's really interesting is how strong our under contracts were. I think that's a great sign. It's a good highlight month over month. Of course, that's seasonality as well, but it's a great sign to see that. Now you see these solds popping off the screen right here at 40% month over month. That's once again seasonality. And
But also, we had a great January
we
to
had a
start the
great
year.
January, really strong pendings with
Yep.
that warm weather. And then that's what's making us look like, wow, 40%. Now, when you look at our year over year, we're still up 16% in sold. That's a good sign. Year over year, we're still about flat with under contracts. We'd like that a little bit higher, but hey, we're moving forward right now.
Yeah, it's a good
And
sign.
really looking at it as a snapshot, I think we're in a healthier market than we were thinking we may be in this year to start the year off.
Here's the thing you do have to look at. We're going to have to take that minus 7% average sales price with a grain of salt. And Tucker and I will explain to you a little bit later where that's coming from. But a lot of it's in the detached market, and definitely some of the luxury market is feeling the squeeze a little bit. Let's dive into inventory, though, specifically. So this is across all price ranges, all product types, right? If you look at it by submarket, this is really where we start to tell the story. The city of Boulder has an excess of inventory. It has for a while. It's not rising super fast. It's only up 8% year over year, but 475 units before we get our inventory surge is high, right? So expect lots of inventory and lots of competition in the city of Boulder as a seller. So what this means for you guys as lenders is go knock on your people's doors and bug everyone that's going to buy in Boulder, because there truly will be a lot of opportunity in that marketplace this year. Not to say prices fall very well in Boulder, because they really don't. They stagnate. But when there's that much on the market, your buyers have so much to choose from.
And you
it's
just
a very
have
cool
so
scenario.
much more room, especially on the detached side of negotiating.
Yeah.
And on the attached side, there's even more, but it just depends on if the folks have the equity on the attached side, because they're getting squeezed pretty hard.
Right. The flip side of the coin, though, is everything else outside of Longmont, all the L towns, Erie, Superior, they really have had an inventory shortage going into this year. It's like sellers haven't come back to market as much as buyers have really kind of come out of the 8 strong. And that's going to change the inventory situation and the seasonality here a little bit. But don't expect that to last forever, right? It's very much clearly like this winter effect in the market where buyers were excited this year. Interest rates have been a little bit better, and sellers have clearly not gotten the message, or they would be on the market.
Yeah, well,
but they
there's
will
also,
get the message.
And remember, from the lender's standpoint, remind your buyers, hey, some people won't sell their house while their kids are in school. Hey, they're waiting until the end of the school year.
It's true.
And remember, a lot of that's outside of Boulder. That's our Lafayette, our L towns, our Superior, our Erie. So that inventory also picks up a little bit later in the year as well for those detached, for those detached homes that
Right.
are built
And
for
as a
families.
buyer, patience is not a bad thing. Right. I mean, clearly the sellers are having the upper hand right now, and I'll show you why here. If you look at month supply of inventory, it really depends on the market you're in. But, Louisville, Lafayette, Erie, Superior, all of them are still in the not even 2 months of inventory, sub 2 months, right? There's a 1 in front of that number. Sellers clearly have control in those marketplaces until that changes. It won't take long. But if you want the best houses, you got to be looking all the time, right? It's those primo properties that are selling with a couple of offers on them. Everything else is still in that holding pattern. So the good news here is if you're representing people in the city of Boulder, there's 3.4 months of inventory. There's definitely stuff to at least go look at. There might be a little bit of an inventory pinch for at least a month or so. In the next 3 months, this whole thing is going to be flipped on its head. You can see it every single year of how it happens. But if you look at the attached market specifically, this is where we have a very flip side of the coin, right? We start at 3 months of inventory. We work our way up almost to 5 months already in the city of Boulder. So opportunity for sure in the attached market.
And personally, I feel like hopefully we'll find the bottom of the attached market this year. It's kind of sliding for the last 3-4 years or so. So kind of hopefully we'll find that bottom this year, which really means there's a massive amount of value that purchasers can have in the attached side. Especially, hey, first-time home buyers, they don't want to over leverage. That's where you can really help them with the value they'll get in the attached market.
Now, if we look at how long it takes to actually put a house under contract, it drops quite a bit going into that June timeline. Expect that it's going to continue to pick up. But look at a lot of these. We're still talking 40, 50, 60 days on most markets, depending on product type and obviously, quality. But the good news here is that your buyers still have plenty of time to get out there and look. They're not like rushing out there like they've been.
And inventory is only going to grow. Remind them inventory is only going to grow through the seasonality. Let's jump to the next slide, because this
Okay,
is where
Tucker,
we really
you talk
break it down.
detached, I'll talk attached.
Okay. So what we're seeing is luxury is, we just have so much more inventory than supply. So for your buyers out there, if you are working on those jumbos, not a lot happening really in that, that 3+ million range. There's just so much inventory. What we are actually seeing quite a bit of activity, which is a really good sign, is that really 2 to 3 million, that whole range. And where we're seeing this increase is, we were kind of saying anecdotally, a lot of sellers got realistic. Is it actually 3 million or is it 2.8 or 2.5? And that's where we're seeing this pickup in sales in this higher luxury, but not that super luxury 3+.
That's right.
And that's because, well, that inventory had price reductions. When it gets sold, it's at a lower price band. So that's why we're seeing an uptick there. Also, in the city of Boulder, we have a lot of that 1 to 1.5 million. Really nice growth there in that market. And we've seen a lot of good sales. Well, this is a really positive sign, because that's kind of, unfortunately, the bread and butter of Boulder and detached. So that's what we're really seeing in Boulder. Now, when we look across the rest of the market, as we go a little bit lower, inventory is flying off shelves if it's priced right and it looks good. And that's where we're seeing those more affordable price bands, under $1 million. As we start going down, yeah, we're going to have more sales, but it's also limited on inventory, because we can see on the inventory side that, really from 500 up to 800,000, we've had a pretty good drop in inventory, but we haven't had as much of a drop in sales. That means we're eating through inventory at a quicker pace at those, more entry level or even just, average outside of Boulder.
Absolutely. Now, if we look at it from an attached standpoint, I do feel like we're finally starting to turn a corner here, right? If we looked at December's numbers, they were about as bad as they could have gotten. And then we got into last month and we're like, well, the solds were awful, right? We had like 9, 11, and 11 across those price bands that are the biggest. And it was rough, right? But all of a sudden here, I think it's interest rates looked a little bit better. So finally you get that. But you also have these motivated buyers coming back into the marketplace, and the prices have been depressed enough that now affordability is less of an issue than it was over the last few years. So we're really starting to see basically from 400 up to 800,000 see a little bit more activity, right? And so that's a good sign. The luxury market's doing what luxury markets do. They kind of hit or miss when they want to. There's not a ton of that stuff. They got sold in the last 2 months, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's, a problem, because we saw so much take place in the fourth quarter that, when the buyers show up, we're essentially, right? And so that's an exciting one. And the Sundance effect is definitely going to happen here. So keep your eyes on what's going under contract and attached. I think this is going to be a really good year for that luxury portion of attached. And as we kind of watch the lower end of the market, there's a lot of inventory for sale, like way too much in some markets, especially in Boulder. So a lot of that, I think you're going to start seeing.
I mean, I just like to look at the numbers, between 300,000 and 500,000 in attached, we have 170 units in Boulder County.
You know what's shocking?
That is a ton.
0 to 299. We actually have 32 active units. We don't normally see those, right? So those could be condos in the city of Boulder, condos out in Longmont, right? They're places where there's older units and they're available, but we don't normally have any.
No,
right?
None.
All right. So what about what's going on month supply of inventory?
I mean, this really explains where the competitiveness is and why it's so much by price band for the county. And as we can see, really, we're under 1 until we get to $1 million. We're under, under 2 months supply of inventory. And especially in those more entry level, that 4 to 600,000, that is 1 month supply. That means inventory is coming on pretty much as fast as it's getting, put under contract. Where we jump up into that, once we hit 1 million, still fast. It's still a balanced, if not seller leaning market. But does that really mean it's seller leaning? No, it just means it's a little bit equal footing. Yeah, except for a few cases we've heard of, having to dust off the old 2-week close, appraisal gap, cash, waive everything.
It
doesn't mean that's normal
also
for everybody.
Very cool house.
Those
Definitely
were unique houses. But then as we go up in those price bands, we can really see how fast it increases, especially once we get over that 2 million. And now it's totally switch into a buyer's market. So that's where, hey, if I'm under $1 million, it's still leaning seller. If it's over $1 million right now, it's leaning buyer, and more buyer the higher you go up in price. As you can see, 18-month supply of 3+ million.
Actually, you know what?
That's
it's climbed from 14 and expected to get to 24 or so where it was last year. There's going to be a lot there, right? That's just, the nature of really high-end luxury real estate. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's look up at attached real quick because it's so different. We're starting at 3 months of inventory between 5 and 600,000. that's probably mostly stuff that's like a townhouse, right? Because you got townhouses out in the county that are going to act very similar and feel very similar to your detached market. But most of that market is pushing 4 months of inventory already. And we're just getting started with our inventory situation. But there's so much opportunity here because that's already buyer favored in this position, right? This really feels like a buyer favored market at 4 months of inventory in Boulder County. I know that NAR would tell you it's balanced from 4 to 6 months. On a national level, that definitely feels more balanced. Here locally, it feels more like 3 is balanced-ish, depending on that kind of price point. But cool things happening here, right? These are moving faster than they have before. 53 days in MLS under a lot of those, 58 days, 63 days. I mean, they're way more in line with the detached market for the first time in years. So hopefully this is a good sign kind of starting off the year a little more positive in the attached market.
Now, this is the big thing we wanted to talk about, and this is where we're looking at that sales price. And right now we're looking at TTM, that's just that last little column. And we love that because it's the last 12 months versus the previous 12 months. So it's an average of averages. So we can kind of sort through the seasonality. Why is it down so much in Boulder? Is it because sales prices have dropped that much? Or are we just not selling as much luxury and we're seeing a lot more movement in that, $2 to $3 million range?
The Boulder median, Boulder average sales price is really where it seems like we're seeing all of our activity.
Yeah. And that's where, that 2 to 3 million market, like I said earlier, is doing well. The 3+ is, luxury. It just takes a while. But that's where we're seeing that decrease is because a lot of what's being sold is in that 1 million to 1.5 million in the city of Boulder instead of that 1.5 to 2. And that's really kind of bringing the average down because we just have more homes on the lower end being sold. But in addition, just what's being purchased, the inventory being purchased is shifting a little bit to a slightly more affordable product. Whereas in the rest of the county, we're seeing increases across the board outside of Lafayette. But why are we seeing those is because there's not enough supply out there. So we're seeing prices really stabilize. And as we talk, Boulder County doesn't have massive drops and swings. It flats, eventually goes up. Right now, we're starting to kind of feel a little bit more of that uptick outside of the city of Boulder in sales prices. So that's actually a really good sign that we're starting to get a little bit more stability.
Yeah.
Hopefully this will help your appraisals. You won't have any appraisal issues this year with having these stronger numbers to start the year off for setting the market.
Well, now that Tucker got to talk about all the good stuff, I'm going to talk about all the bad stuff. But honestly,
thanks, buddy.
It seems to be the trend lately. But the attached market really has to be getting closer to the bottom because over the last 12 months, Lafayette saw a 14% drop in sales price in the attached product, 9% drop in Louisville. I mean, we had a 6% drop in Longmont. So these are some pretty heavy numbers. And I think the only thing holding up the Boulder values at 0% are definitely not the lower end condos, right? They're experiencing the same thing where, we're building cool new product. We're selling a different product type on Pearl Street. And, some of the luxury stuff is clearly going off the shelf faster than, maybe before. So unique time in attached, but it is not pretty. So just kind of watch this. But I think because it's been so awful, for the last few years, we're getting to the point where clearly buyers are paying attention. So definitely pitch this product to your buyers. I've even heard of some HOAs going down in price recently.
Mine did.
Yeah, so that's great news.
$20.
Good news is that we're starting to feel the HOAs have clearly had enough pressure.
I think the HOAs have figured out, and that's just anecdotal, but you'll probably notice that a lot of the special assessments have already happened, the siding, the roof, and that's why people are wanting to buy them now is because they look nicer.
Exactly, and I had one the other day go from 1,000 to 700. So like some of the stuff that they maybe didn't want to put a special assessment in for, they raised those dues way up, and then once they paid for the problem, you're kind of getting it back. So hopefully that'll help values because it's all affordability and attached, as we all know.
Yeah.
All right. So this is kind of a fun one. If you ever have to shoot a video or something, Tucker and I like to just show this, like, where are we at for the year? This is a really easy bar graph to read for anybody. You can see at the bottom, it's got the cool table that shows year to date by market. Longmont's been doing great. It's probably price point driven. Rates are better. I mean, really 8% more sales is awesome to see there. Boulder is exactly the same. So yes, we're selling a different product type, but it is the same. Louisville and Superior has just not had very many sales this year.
And that's really tragic. This is kind of an inventory situation too. When you look out there, they're pretty tight on that. So this might pick up as more inventory hits, in that April, May, June timeframe.
And the one that I was really happy to see because it definitely means that market is changing is Lafayette had those big price drops last year. Now there's all these sales taking place that'll really stabilize that market. So that's super exciting to see.
All right. So this is something that's fun. We're looking at both detached and attached. It's pretty similar actually with these numbers.
That's why we kept it together.
And what's interesting is when we're looking at this, you can see how much of that 1 million to 1.5 million, how strong that's been. Now there's a couple of outliers there, but that's showing those new inventory, the product coming on that's buttoned up nice. Those are the ones getting those over asking and competitive situations. So we can really see that part of the market's doing actually really well from a seller standpoint. From a buyer standpoint, you can see how outside of that really nice little window, it's kind of dropped quite a bit, especially under $1 million. You know, it's 98. It's actually gone up a bit, but it's, how do I say this? Sorry. It's gone up a little bit, but it's still so far off of where we were in COVID. And so it's still helping sellers understand, hey, if I get an offer at 98%, shoot, this is average. This is on average.
I think the one thing that this really tells us more than anything is just buyers have the upper hand just a little bit more than they did a year ago, right? There's not too much else to take away from this. But if you look at over the last 12 months, it's continued to be a little bit more buyer favored in every single area except for the 1 to 1.5 million range.
Yep.
That's it, right? It doesn't tell us too much because we don't have concessions and we don't have the price drop data. So it has to be more surface level conversation.
Yeah. And we did see an increase in the average percent sold to list price month over month, which, you know, that's a good sign because it means as more inventory came on, we weren't having a decrease in our sales price.
It's very seasonal, pretty normal behavior, but it's more extreme than it has been in years past. So that's a good sign, I think. We came from the absolute worst list of sale price month we've had in a very long time in January. So
for, probably a decade plus.
Dude, it was brutal.
January was horrible.
Absolutely. Okay, well, that's kind of what we have on a positive note, wrapping things up.
Yeah.
We are pretty optimistic about this year, so that's excited to see. Well, if you have any questions, concerns, please reach out to us with other data needs, or if there's anything we do to help you get buyers under contract, that's what we're here for. We're just your partners. So
we're happy to help.
Thanks for having us.
Take care, everyone.